All right. Can you see that it says we're recording now?
And then it says, I'll just continue.
Okay,
Okay.
sounds good. So I'm going to start by reading this. So this is Matthew Sims interviewing Consuelo Jimenez Underwood at her home in Cupertino, California, where it's probably pretty hot right now. It's hot town.
85, everybody's dying. I grew up in desert heat. Okay, this is nothing. This is lovely. Okay, 120, then we can cry. Okay, 102, okay, we get the air conditioning on. But 84, 88, give me a break.
Oh, we're a bunch of wimps. Well, it is Friday, July 10th, just 2020. And thank you so much for being part of this Archives of American Art. It's called the Pandemic Project. But we just wanted to check in with you, see how you're doing. So how are you doing?
I'm doing really well. I am really happy that none of us, close ones at all, have been affected by the virus, but we're all scaredy cats, and I'm the #1 scaredy cat. And I'm kind of like, I've always wanted to live isolated alone in my home with just the cares being provided for, and that's what's happening. And I can't believe the whole world is living like me, isolated. Oh my gosh, I'm doing really well because, like I said, our loved ones are healthy. We have a little bit of an income that we're not starving. We're blessed. We're blessed. We're blessed. And so I think the way I'm approaching this is, my mandate is to create as much as possible and keep the wheel moving.
Right. And what's occupying your attention right now? What kind of
Oh
thing?
my gosh, there's like 4 or 5 things. I retired because I was just too busy with academia and this stuff. So right now I've got the Ganges project, which is a mural of 3.5 foot by 27 foot mural in a home and I'm doing it FaceTime. The young lady, the lady who wants it is an architect, and her daughter is a high school art major.
Mm-hmm.
She is like a painting a graduate of San Jose State. She knows her way with brush. She knows her way with color. So we're doing the Ganges.
Wow.
The Ganges River as a borderline. You know my borderlines, right? Well, instead of a borderline, it's the Ganges. And it takes the whole 24 feet length of the wall over her archway of her mansion there. It is gorgeous. We're doing it on a canvas.
Oh gosh.
On the floor. And so I'm giving them my sketches. They are so, if they were my students, I'd give them an A+ for the semester in how tight and how good they are. So yeah. I'm like, oh my God. So as a result, Tufts is wanting me next spring. And I'm going, I don't know if I want to do this. I don't want to get on an airplane. But if this works, then I really want to do it Zoom time or FaceTime. And so I'm sorry about that noise in the background, but
it's reality.
So I'm really happy that I can't talk over her. La vida. It's been.
Tell me about this Ganges thing, because so you're sharing sketches via FaceTime, but you have someone on the other end who is.
They're translating, because what I'm doing is I'm giving them, you know how you can get any image. Let me turn this baby off.
Okay, sure.
Oh, she went off. Yeah, what I'm doing is, you know how you can grid any image and reproduce it in any way, shape, or form. Right. So I drew my sketch and I went, okay, put the Ganges in there, tape it up, and now mix this color. And I give them the color and they mix it. And I apply it so that it looks like this. And I did them close-ups of some of the borderlines I've done.
Right.
Well, this young lady, I give her things and she comes out with like this. And I'm like, well, blow me down. This is better than what I was expecting. So as a result, it's super duper good. And right now we're at the last stages. And afterwards, I'll send you images of what I'm talking about. And it's all serendipity because she gave me the flowers of India. I got the 3 flowers on that. I got the Ganges all in there with this tributaries. And
Right.
you can imagine what it is, this, all the activity
Oh,
of color. And then over that, overlaid, because I know how to do it with stencils, I am putting 3 leaves of a leaf that she sent me. And I went, okay, well, the leaf represents the fig tree that Buddha slept under. And it represents the 3 religions of the Ganges. And I selected 3 leaves to put all across the mural.
mm,
And it's just, I really, the 3 religions? And I went number 3. And then she sends me, so we're going to have those 3 leaves as part of the leaf repeated 3 times as part of the image. The most beautiful part was, okay, this is the prayer. And I said, spirituality, blah, blah, I love that, and I really, what I'm doing it for is because I want to pay homage to the Ganges. It's one of the greatest rivers in the world. And I feel that it should have honor to it. Even though I've never been to it, I just say, oh, what a beautiful thing to show off its flowers, its life, its colors. And then I went, oh, is there, the writing is real beautiful, and they're very, they know their language, they know how to write. And so I went, what about this prayer? And it's a prayer it's about Om.
mm-hmm.
And the main trees, it's like, it's like the Lord's Prayer, but in a much more where they interact the intellect, the physical,
Right.
and the creative. And it's like a 5-line thing. And I went, why don't we write, we're going to put, now the Ganges is ready to make the crash over the Ganges, the final colors.
Yeah.
One of the first color will be this bright pink. On top of that will be in this wave sea blue foam blue. She's going to write this prayer in large letters like spider all across the Ganges, just repeating it over and over again. And then we're going to mess it up with pests. It is incredible. Okay, incredible. The other one is I'm doing this project called, I've always wanted to do it, honoring the state documented wildflowers. So on men's handkerchiefs, I'm making portraits with crayon onto these handkerchiefs to be connected with safety pins, and there'll be all the state flowers, and on the bottom is all their name, their scientific names. You know how Adam went around and he documented and identified and did everything to those plants. Well, I'm doing that to those flowers, but I'm showing their beauty. And I was like 50 of them, because I started like 4, right? I don't think we have a wall big enough to photograph all 50. Oh no! So 3 days ago, I brought it down. We'll just do the state border flowers of the North and the border flowers of Canada, and that's 17. And odd number, we'll just highlight California.
Yeah.
The kick will be that the 4 border states and California will have embroidered all across the image, the running family with the mom in front in a very iridescent, see-through, beautiful, reflective thread.
Which carries through to your
Yes, totally. And then I'm going, oh, it's only 17. I can actually stitch like borders, like at the bottom of Navajo blankets, there's always a border. I can stitch those borders on the bottom of it's gonna be, oh my God. So I'm so excited because that's something I can do while I'm sitting down and not running around. And then I've also, Matthew, this is the most incredible. I've been looking at this image for like 2 years, 2 years. And I finished the Ganges, because on top of the Ganges, I wove, do you see those?
Oh my goodness.
Those are the reflection elements that are going to go across the canvas after it's painted. We're going to suspend them with breath. Say that took me like 2 seasons to weave all those. I obviously, like Consuelo, I made 2 million. I need 1,000. So the extras we're going to use because they look beautiful interacting with each other. But
your loom, for a second, if you don't mind. Is your loom right in that room?
Yes, I'm going to show you. So here's what I saw 2 or 3 years ago. Do you see the red-tailed blackbird hitting the border fence in Texas?
Yeah, look at that.
I want to honor that.
Yeah.
So what I thought was, oh my God, I'm going to make those strips out of this kind of weave with black and purple, right? 8 giant 8-foot ones. And then in the middle, I'm gonna, from here, that pattern, I'm gonna weave those in squares and put them together in another weave structure and have them crash in through in those pillars. I am so, but I want to put the ganjis to rest.
Yes.
Before I start threading, because these babies are ready to rock and roll. I even have the print. This is the map of the pieces, because I want to weave them and then put them together in a different weave structure than the wire that I've gotten going for the. Okay, so those two I'm going on, and then I've got this one. Do you see that? Zen threads?
Yeah.
How threads help me define, understand my life's journey.
Yeah.
The book, right view, right resolve, right speech, right conduct. And each one is already lined up with images and some kind of paragraph. And I'm going to extend that to a book. So hopefully, I'm hoping in 2 years I can have a manuscript so that my friend who's publishing the book that's coming out next spring, Duke has already signed the contract, publishing on the first anthology. And my friend says, if you have a manuscript with this stuff, we can probably apply for a Guggenheim. I have no clue what that is, but she says a Guggenheim is for mature artists that want to do a parallel project.
Yeah. Oh, that's a great idea. I think that's genius.
No footnotes, just pure Consuelo and close-ups. And then Consuelo is crazy, right? Because we've only got 10 years, honey. I'm going to be 80. I hope I could, I know on these other projects takes 1 or 2 years, but then, oh my gosh, oh no, you're gonna drop me. You're gonna say she's crazy. Get us out of here. Here's one of the studies for, I think this is Montana flower. But let me show you the other idea that is just fabulous. So I'm concerned, right? Because I know I can weave a loom for another 10 years. But, where is it? Where are they?
That's because of your fingers and arthritis, right? That's
well, yeah, arthritis, vision, stamina, And I'm going, but Consuelo, what about your painting? You want to do painting after you can't weave.
Yeah.
What are you going to paint? Well, I've been thinking about that. Are you just going to start cold? No, you better start, warming up. Look at this. Close-ups of my, aren't they beautiful?
Yeah, they are. They're great.
They're really stunning paintings, 3 by 5,
It's a great idea.
I know.
Because
I don't have time.
A lot of those things were ephemeral, right? I mean, they were, you put them up and then they were taken down.
Yes, and they go away. Yes.
So now this would be a way to kind of
forever.
Yeah.
I have the canvas. I have the paints for this is the one I did in, and these are just ideas because of the close-up, but they're not, I love the colors. I have the colors. I have the canvas in the other studio, Mendocino, and I'm going, okay, we're going to start that. We're going to start that. Yeah. But right now we got to finish the ganjis. We got to do I want to do the birds. That's how I'm doing.
Got a lot of stuff happening.
That's how I'm doing. Plus, I just got on the advisory council for the Craft in America in LA.
Yeah. Wow.
Plus, they're plus. So I'm doing really well because I have my family that takes care of me.
Yeah.
Velina, my daughter, it's time to eat, Mom. Come on, let's eat. Marco says, do you really want to do that?
That's your husband.
Yes. So it's really, and then the grandson is living with us. Thank goodness he's not going to go to ASU. He's in ASU one last year. He's going to do it online, but he's with us. So his job is to, babysit me? I don't need baby Haggy.
I'm glad you're surrounded by people who are you're all
on board. They're all on board. They all know how important our work is. They all see the big picture as opposed to the me.
Yeah.
And that's what we're about. And that's the big one. All this stuff I'd rather be doing scarves, you know. I'd rather be doing some, but if I have a chance to do something meaningful for the bigger picture that will last, that's what I want to do. Like the birds.
Yeah. Speaking of bigger picture, you know,
Yes.
your work is so important and speaks to so many things that are on so many people's minds right now, you know, nationally, internationally. I don't know what's your take on what's going on? I mean, what?
It's like it's not a wake up call, but it's like the effect of karma.
Hmm.
We wanted that border to separate us. Well, we're separated,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
We wanted a reason to live. Well, now we have to think of family, not just our good times
Yeah.
for ourselves. Because
Right.
whatever we do affects our close ones. So now we have to think about that. And I'm going to, was becoming such a me, and still is generation or cultural view perspective that it was going a little weird, you know, a little off course. And so this is like, hey, wait a minute. Do we really want to go there? I mean, really, do we, you know, I think that's what it is. It's like a, you know, wake up, because if you want it, you get it. You know, you want borders, we got borders.
Yeah.
You know, you want you want something to focus on. Yeah, our health and our family's health.
Right.
You know, and if you don't care about nation, other nations are looking at our nation. If we want to be proud Americans, it's not so proud out there once you leave the country.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's such a cool thing in a really weird way.
Yeah.
And when I heard, and I was always like going around to these places of universities where there's young people, and I was always like, oh my God, I felt so good that we had such bright, discerning young minds. Like I remember this one lady that was one of the Black Lives Matter. She was interviewed, and they were asking her, "Well, what do you think? They arrested those three policemen that were over there with that guy when they were putting him, you know, when they killed him, Floyd." And the girl went, and I was like, "Yeah, I guess she's gonna say, yeah, it's okay. It's pretty good, right direction." The young lady said, "Now." Now, after all this time, now you want me to be happy that they're arrested now? And I was like, that's the difference between our generation and theirs.
Yeah.
They're calling, you know, on it, you know. And so I feel like, and then I heard Obama speak, and I felt he was happy that the young people were taking it on and going, that's exactly what I was telling all these young people. I'm so happy you guys are here.
Yeah.
I'm so happy you guys are what you are,
Mm.
because you're the ones that are going to lead us out of this place, you know?
And you mentioned that when I came to see you at your home, you were talking about, you know, at the university and kind of the big stories that get told about the country,
Mm-hmm.
and the kind of like play the game and then make your difference. You know, you sort of, I remember what you're saying, like, yeah, Columbus and, you know, discovered America. Yeah, whatever.
Yes.
And, you know,
Infiltrate.
infiltrate.
That was my mantra. It
Yeah.
was a harsh word, but I had to be harsh because I was coming from a harsh environment.
Right.
You know, it was infiltrate. Get in there and then change, get to the place where you can have a touch of the wheel and kind of flip it with your little pinky a little more in this direction, because I know I wasn't going to flip it around, but
Right.
just infect,
Yeah.
you know. And it's so neat because when I rant and rave to my family, it's so neat to see that, oh my gosh, they're using the same terminology and way of looking at it 2 or 3 months later, but they're getting it.
Right.
And so I think so how am I feeling? I feel sad because I know what the suffering is like, especially those kids. We still have them in cages, you know, with adults, unsupervised, with coronavirus, with tents in 110 degrees. We're still doing that as a nation. And so guess what? You guys have to live in cages too, your own home. And be happy because your homes are pretty.
Yeah.
So don't cry to me, you
Right.
know?
Right.
And so that's why I'm going, okay, I'm not the one ranting and raving. The earth, the world is going, you want to play? Let's play.
Yeah. No.
You know?
We only have a couple minutes, but I
Yes.
think your work, I mean, your work is so wonderful because it deals with all these things in a way that is also very beautiful. You know, I mean, in
Yes,
other
it
words, it's
has.
also very much about the tradition, carrying forward certain traditions of making, you know.
And thinking, think
Yeah,
about the bigger picture, the
yeah,
birds, the bees, the skies.
yeah,
I'm so happy there's not a lot of airplanes. Now we have clouds again,
yeah,
instead of pretend clouds that are made from the exhaust of the airplanes.
right. I know. And then, you know, the fish and the dolphins coming back and things like this.
Are they? I didn't, yeah.
Yeah. We saw dolphins down in a place that we never see them. So,
Yeah, it's like, okay, you want to play, play, let's play. I mean, the world is so forgiving. It
mm,
so loves us,
yeah,
you know. And at the same time, it's like, oh my God, again, I feel like going, oh my God, you guys just don't get, you know, come on, let's get it together. Because these issues about toil at nation and city and family, it's been going on since the Babylonian texts,
mm, mm. It's
you
not.
know. It's the same issues. The king is too powerful. There's famine, you know. The kids don't listen to the elders, you know. The priests are all corrupt. I mean, those are the things that they were talking about in Babylon.
Yeah, yeah.
And
And the
that was,
languages, one of the things you do also is that borderline of languages too. You know, that's a
oh,
goes
I
back to
grew up in that triangular. I didn't know, you know, that's why I don't know how to speak very well, because I don't know whether I'm thinking this way or that way or this way. And at first I was like, oh my God, this is horrible. But now I'm going, this is pretty neat. And
yeah,
that's why I love when I went to Europe. They not only had 1 or 2 languages, these folks got 5 to 3 to 7 languages down, you know? And I'm going, how come we think that we're stupid over there? We just have to speak one. Are we really that much of a colonial nothing, you know? Because we're just a colony.
yeah,
We're just supposed to work and pay taxes. And instead of the forum, here's your iPhone,
yeah,
you
yeah.
know? And don't worry about anything. And yeah, the strong will survive.
Mm,
Right? It's amazing. So I'm excited, okay?
yeah,
But I'm also very scared. And I'm also very, like, the reason I'm doing this stuff is for those dumb kids, you know, those
and you're
people over
channeling
there.
everything into positive stuff, which I think is great. I mean,
I
you're
have to. There's
yeah,
enough negative. And these young people, if I'm leaving this for the young people, they gotta have more positive. You know, one of the main quotes that came out of the Brown, and they're still using it over there, and I kept reminded of it, is that when there's chaos, you know, that's a time to become, I don't know what I said, something that we reconstruct it again with beauty.
mm,
You
mm,
know, that's what's so great about chaos. We can reconstruct again in
yeah,
our own way. And if we make it the right, and that's why I always knew a time of crisis was a time of shift.
yeah,
It's a
yeah,
time to shift gears, shift views, shift
mm,
filters, something shift. And now we're shifting.
yeah,
We're like, we don't want this guy anymore,
right, right,
you know, and that's a great cultural shift.
yeah,
And I think this nation is so great. I think it's very savable if we
mm,
get this guy out.
yeah,
I'm not worried anymore that he's gonna stay. He's not gonna stay.
no, no,
He's gonna get kicked out,
mm,
you know. And I'm just hoping
me,
that the young people keep on. I was worried about the mass protests
mm-hmm,
because of the mass. I was really, but I saw that a lot of the protesters that were legit, they
yeah,
kept their distance,
yeah,
in the marches, and they tried.
yeah,
And so I'm worried about them in that sense, and I'm worried that these older elders are not taking care of them.
mm,
Putting ICE in charge of students that are foreign, ICE, who have no, the FBI and the CIA have no control over ICE.
yeah. Well,
I know, there's so many issues.
what can you leave us with? Just maybe final
Oh my
word?
gosh. Oh, the music of the 60s, Carry On. And then
Yeah,
talking about my generation,
yeah,
remember the generation. And here, my favorite, Here They Come Again. Catch us if you can.
yeah,
Gotta get a move on. We were young with all of our might. And I'm thinking that's our generation. And that's the one that were being edited.
Well, thank you so much. And I hope to see you again in person soon, you know, and a trip up north, but stay well. And I can't wait to see some images, maybe the Ganges or any other project.
Oh, I'm going to send you images of the Ganges and where we're doing right now.
All right.
Because right now, I think we're going to do the final painting stages, and then we'll do pastel, and then attach these things, and onward with the birds and the flowers. So
All right. Well, I'm going to go and turn this off, and we can talk a little bit more
yes.
after. All right. So.